Hey everybody, I'm back with another beer for another review. Now today we have another local-ish beer, more local than the last one. This is the St. Arnold by the Monk's Cellar. Now, the Monk's Cellar is located in downtown Roseville. It's really cool, it's a little pricey, but if you've never been to downtown Roseville, it's a neat area. I'd say check it out. And if you go there, go to the Monk's Cellar and get yourself a Belgian beer. They specialize in Belgian beer. It's pretty much all Belgian beer. Really cool place, my kind of place. But we have the St. Arnold, which is a Belgian quadruple ale, which is usually a very strong ale. It's a darker Belgian style. It usually uses those same Belgian yeasts, that's a hard word to say, that you get from other Belgian beers. But this is going to be a lot more intense. It's fermented a little longer. This one specifically is put into a brandy barrel for 6 months. Very cool. Different from the whiskey barrels you sometimes get for stouts. And we had that Founder's Goes was in a tequila barrel, which was cool. I think this is my first brandy barrel beer. Now, let's read the label real quick. Every December, we pay homage to Arnold of Soissons, the patron saint of Belgian brewers, by brewing this very special beer. This 2020 version of St. Arnold was aged in brandy barrels for 6 months. Prominent dark fruit and spices with notes of candied almonds and figs. A perfect beer to sip on a cool winter evening. Now, this is a darker beer, but it is not a dark beer. It's not comparable to a stout or a porter in any way. It is a different kind of dark beer, like a dark lager. If you've ever had a dark lager before, this is similar in the way that the color is dark, but the characteristics of the beer itself are not dark. Now this, you can tell they bottled it in-house. You can tell it's a small brewery because it's got a plain cap on it, but it has a very nicely shaped bottle. I'm very fond of this bottle. Makes me feel fancy. Now, if you thought that last beer we did was strong, buddy, you were wrong. Because this is a 12.9%. This is not your grandma's beer. We're not doing fucking high school kid party beer reviews. This is some cultured shit. This is some expensive, some high quality, high percentage shit. This was $12 for this bottle, by the way. Like I said, expensive. Mais c'est très bien, je pense. And we have this lovely dark color. Darker than a red, I'd say browner than a red, but not as dark as a brown. It's in its own little area. It's hard to tell, but from my side it's pretty red. From your side it almost looks like soda. It's pretty brown. That's what I thought the first time I had it. I thought it was kind of comparable to like a root beer, but it's a very pretty color. I can still see my fingers through it a little bit, so there's not a horrible amount of adjunct in it. As you can see by the loss of the head, it's not a very highly carbonated beer, but don't let that tell you anything, because that can be misleading sometimes. Now, this is not a beer for a casual beer drinker. You have to be a little more acclimated to the weird stuff to enjoy this beer. And me personally, I like to think that I'm a little adventurous with my beer, but this is a little far out for me. When you smell this, you get dark fruit, like fermented fruit, which could come from the brandy barrel, but it's almost comparable to red wine. It's got that sour, maybe almost vinegary smell that you get from wine in general, but especially from a red wine, especially because this is so dark, it makes sense that one could make that comparison. I also get a little bit of chocolate too, which is interesting because I don't know that they roast the hops in these darker Belgian ales, but that flavor would be similar to something you would get in a beer that did roast its malt. I don't know if the chocolate comes from that, but it's comparable. I know I didn't review this beer, but I've had Delirium Nocturnum before, which is a seasonal beer that's kind of hard to get in the United States, but that's their seasonal dark Belgian ale, and this is comparable to that. Fruity, chocolatey, a little sour, not bitter, but overall it's a nice smell. Almost champagne. Wine, champagne is kind of what I get from it. Again, from the flavor, you get that red wine kind of sweet but bitter, kind of fruity flavor that you would get from like the wine grapes, I guess, if that makes sense. And it feels a little more carbonated in the mouth than it looks in the glass. And that kind of makes me think of champagne when you're drinking. It's like a carbonated wine is really the closest thing I could compare it to. It doesn't really taste like a beer at all. If you really think about it, especially because it's so boozy, because the percentage is so high, you can almost taste the brandy. If you really think about it, you really look for it. It's not the darker, sweeter kind of booziness that we had in that Founders beer that was more like a Kahlua. This is more like a brandy, honestly. Like I said, if you really think about it when you're drinking it, you can pick up those brandy notes. Now, like I said, this is darker in color. Not so much now, you can see the light on it a little better. It's a little redder. But this has no resemblance to a dark beer. It doesn't have the fuller body of a porter or a stout. It's not opaque like a porter or a stout would be. It doesn't have the same flavor profile that a porter or a stout would have. So don't let the color deceive you. If you like porters and stouts, don't expect this to be like that, because it's not. It's very unique. You still get a little bit of that Belgian sweetness. I'm sure that's from the yeast. Like I said, I'm sure they use similar yeast. But it's not even like a Belgian beer for the most part. I remember having the Delirium Nocturnum and being a little disappointed in how different it was. But you just have to think about it a little more when you're drinking it. This is not something you could really drink casually. I only bought 2 bottles of this because it's not something I can drink casually. This is something, in my opinion, you really have to sit and kind of think about and try to appreciate, especially because it's such a high percentage, you know. You could pound it and you would get drunk, but I just don't think it would be that fun, you know, because then if you pound it, you don't really think about it. It's going to taste like you're drinking vinegar or something, and you're not going to have a good time. So don't waste a $12 beer like this by chugging it. Just sit and think it's nice. Because I think it's nice. It's not my favorite thing, but I think it's nice. It's a very interesting beer. If you really are looking to expand your palate, I would highly recommend something like this, because it's not like any other beer I've had before, except for that Nocturnum, but that was also not like anything I've ever had before. So definitely something to try if you're stuck in your ways, you don't like wine, you don't like brandy, don't drink this. Don't waste your money because you're not going to like it. But I think it's a cool beer. It's a little overpriced. I mean, it makes sense. Same thing as the last one, because it's aged and because it's a higher percentage. I can see why the price point would be higher, but I'm not comfortable spending $12 on a 12-ounce bottle of beer. So I would give this like a 6, maybe. It's not something I generally go for. It's not really my favorite thing, but it's a good beer. It's a cool beer. And maybe if I happened to be there for some reason and I really wanted to get drunk, I would get this. But I'm not going to go out of my way to drive to downtown Roseville to buy this beer again. It's a one-off kind of thing. It's cool, but it's one-off. Hey, I just want to add there's a lot of sediment in this beer. You see all those white spots? Those are not bubbles, that's gunk. I know it's not gunk, but it is little particles of shit in my beer. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm sure whatever it is helping with the taste, but it kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies. So, something to think about. So, I think that's all I got for this one. If you enjoyed my video, please leave me a like. If you know any cool beers from any cool local breweries that you would like to see me try, leave me a comment and let me know. I'll try them out for sure. I hope you have a great, whatever day of the week it is, I hope you have a great rest of your week.